Hello, everybody. Today's review is going to be of Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, which is a comedy from uh, quite a few years ago, actually. I have the DVD right here, so I guess I can grab it and tell you exactly what year it's from. Usually it says 2006, I guess. It might have even been before that, but that might have been when the DVD came out of the movie anyway. Um, So yeah, 8 out of 10 is what I gave this movie. I thought it was just one of those ones from like a very long time ago, like like the late '90s and early 2000s is probably one of the best. I would say probably like around 1995 to about 2010, really. I would say was probably the best time for comedy movies. Just as like just that whole genre, that whole timeline, I would say, like '90s and like the 2010s was, or the 2000s, not the 2010s, sorry. Yeah, the '90s and the 2000s were probably the best time for comedy movies. I feel like now there's still some that come through the woodwork, as we call it, I guess, that are good, but I just feel like they're very few and far between. I feel like comedy's just changed so much, and sometimes I know that comedians obviously have a hard time now. It seems with just a lot of the stuff people say back to them, and it makes it hard for comedians, especially when a mass group of people say that they're offended by a certain thing and so on and so forth. It makes it difficult to make good comedy, I think, nowadays. But maybe we'll have a resurgence again of some good comedy. But yeah, I feel like it, when like a group of people, like a mass group of people, come after you to try to the whole cancel culture thing, I guess we could call it. Um, I don't really think it's quite as big as it was, like like say like 5 or 6 years ago. I think everything just kind of has its trend, right? Like everybody calls it cancel culture, and you kind of fight against it or whatever to say that you can't really cancel me. But I guess it was kind of like people bringing up people's pasts and then trying to shame them for it. And I mean, we all do stuff we regret, right? Like we all do stuff that in I mean, most of us, I would say, do stuff we sometimes regret. Or you can look at it from my point of view, like, don't have any regrets. Your life went the way it was supposed to, sort of thing. And you wouldn't be where you are if you hadn't have done the things you've done in the past anyway. I mean, sure, if you could go back and change it, I guess maybe you would. But I don't think that's maybe a healthy way to really look at it either, because you should always just be moving forward. Um, and I think that's a more healthy way to look at it. Like, your past is your past. You've made mistakes. You've done things that maybe you weren't proud of. But again, it's a learning, like a learning. I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Like life lessons, I guess, like a learning curve, or yeah. I don't really know what I'm trying to say there. I guess I'm kind of losing my train of thought. But anyway, 8 out of 10 for this movie. So it was kind of cool to see that in this movie. I guess I kind of went on like a life lesson rant just from that little bit. Hey, just from this being a comedy movie. Anyway, so it was kind of cool to see in this movie that they did visit some um, actual real life racetracks. So Talladega Speedway was obviously probably the biggest one that most people would know, even if you weren't necessarily a NASCAR fan. And then, of course, we had Charlotte Motor Speedway, as it is known today. But I guess back then, when this movie was made, it was known as Lowe's Motor Speedway. So I thought that was kind of a cool piece of NASCAR history. Um, and then we had Rockingham Speedway. Now, I think some of the races, obviously, in the movie were fictional. Um, Now, forgive me for not remembering the name of every race in the movie, but I do know that at least they were racing in NASCAR, and that was more the main thing than anything else, right? Was that Ricky Bobby, as a kid, had a kind of, I guess you could call him like a deadbeat dad. Didn't really show up too much for Ricky's childhood. Showed up one day all of a sudden for this like show and tell thing, or like bring your parent to school day, or yeah, what was it? Kind of, I guess, that in that sense, that like bring your parent to school day, or uh, parent teacher day or whatever. No, that was different. That was like meeting with the teacher, right? So I guess it would be like bring your parent to work day, and then kind of like they explain their career and job and so on and so forth. And then he says to Ricky, if you're not first, you're last, after getting kicked out of the school. And so Ricky kind of lives by that motto through his whole life. And then he gets on the pit crew of this NASCAR team, and the NASCAR driver that they're working for just doesn't really care about the race. And of course, Ricky gets, I guess, a chance to get behind the wheel of the car, and they realize just how phenomenal he truly is behind the wheel, so he starts winning. And then he brings on his friend Cal Lawton Jr., and they do the whole shake and bake thing where they're like the teammates, right? And they're progressing throughout the race. Like Ricky's always first and Cal's always second. So, um, yeah, it was just just absolutely hilarious, the certain parts of this movie. But we will go over the casting list just before we get too much more into the story, because I feel like everybody in this movie actually kind of played an important role, even if it was smaller than, obviously the main characters. So Will Ferrell, who played Ricky Bobby, John C. Reilly, who played Cal Naughton Jr., Sacha Baron Cohen, who played John Gerard, Gary Cole, who played Reese Bobby, Michael Clark Duncan, who played Lucius Washington, Leslie Bibb, who played Carly Bobby, Jane Lynch, who played Lucy Bobby, Amy Adams, who played Susan, Andy Richter, who played Gregory, Molly Shannon, who played Mrs. Dennett, Greg Germain, who played Larry Dennett Jr., Dave Koechner, who played Herschel, or David Koechner, sorry, who played Herschel, Jack McBriar, who played Glenn, Ian Roberts, who played Kyle, and then Pat Hingle, who played Mr. Dennett Sr. So everybody kind of had an important role to play in this movie, even if it was very small. So yeah, I guess kind of in the beginning, Pat Hingle, or Mr. Dennett Sr., was the owner of the race team, right? And then I guess his son kind of slowly took over, obviously, as he was working towards his retirement, because he was getting much older, obviously, right? So you can't own a race car team forever. That's just not how that works. So obviously Larry was going to be taking over, and with his wife, and so he brought Jean Girard in as Ricky's new teammate. And then Ricky gets injured, of course, after a fatal crash. And I think it was the second race that him and... Or yeah, he gets injured, and then he goes off, and of course, Girard can race. He's from Formula One, so he really does know how to race. Now, Girard had a husband, Gregory, and they, of course... This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, the humor in this, they didn't hold any thing back, right? They made fun of everything. So, I mean, it was subtle, like, the whole thing about them just, like, kind of staring blankly into the TV after they go on about Jean Girard and his husband, and even the horses were gay. I was just like, oh my god, this is just absolutely ridiculous, the humor in this, but it just worked. It just worked so well, the humor in this. And then, of course, even when they're in the car, like, the little things that Jean Girard was doing, like sipping a macchiato or reading a book, and it was just like, because he's French, right? So it was, they really, like, poked fun at the, I guess, kind of culture too, in a sense. Even the American culture, they definitely poked fun at that too, with the whole Ricky Bobby thing and him just being like a complete redneck and always wanting to win, and just being a little, I guess, kind of on like the stupider side, I guess you could say. Not really like the smartest person in the room, that's for sure. And neither was Cal Naughton Jr., but they were always good friends. And then, of course, when Ricky starts to lose, Ricky's wife, where was she? There, Carly decides that she's gonna go and date Cal now. Of course, I was just like, what are we doing here? Because Ricky and Carly have kids together. Oh my god, what were their names? I wish I could remember their names. It was just so ridiculous. And then, of course, the grace where he's talking about baby Jesus, and that's the version of Jesus he likes the most. So that's how he's going to say the grace. And then he goes, whenever you say grace, you can, refer to Jesus as however you want, but this is how I'm going to say the grace. And then, of course, Cal interrupts and tries to say how he would like to picture Jesus, and so on and so forth. And it's just like a whole bunch of different meals. Like it's, what did they have? Like Taco Bell, Burger King, I think Domino's Pizza, and then of course the kids are drinking Mountain Dew. So it was just so funny to see like all of the little uh, tropes and stuff that they would throw into the movie to kind of, I guess, make fun of even the Southern culture and the French culture and all that kind of stuff. It just worked so well for this movie. The humor in it was just great. And then, of course, Ricky being in the hospital and then thinking he's actually paralyzed, but it's just all in his head, and then thinking that he's on fire and asking for help from Tom Cruise and Oprah Winfrey and a whole bunch of other um, a whole bunch of other people, and then Cal trying to put out the fake fire. There was just so many funny moments in this movie, and then of course at the end when at the last race, of course, it comes down between Ricky and Jean Girard, and they're the only two left in the race. And of course, they're being so rough with one another. Now, I don't think, yeah, in NASCAR, you're not allowed to intentionally hit somebody. So if they think there was like ill intent or you were intentionally trying to put out another racer, you can get penalized for that and you can get fined for that. So obviously not obviously this movie they made it the last scene much more intense when they're hitting one another and then they all flip and like go to commercial break, cut to an Applebee's commercial, and of course the Applebee's was the whole thing with the family when they go for dinner, and then of course Reese decides that he's gonna be the person he normally would be and just he doesn't think that he's a good guy, right? So he tries to break up the whole family dynamic because he's like, okay, they're having too good of a time, and I'm going to somehow ruin this because I haven't been in their lives at all so far. So I guess he kind of realizes the person that he is in a sense, but also he wants the family dynamic at the end, I guess. Finally comes to terms and realizes that he has a son and grandchildren that he would like to be a part of their lives. So yeah, I guess he kind of had like a turnaround in the movie at the very end. Reese did, so good for him. Um, and of course, the grandmother Jane Lynch, she's always funny, no matter what role she's in. I feel like she's one of the ones that just comedic genius as far as that goes. At least in movies, I haven't seen her do like any stand up or anything, so it would be interesting to see her do a stand up routine. I don't know if she does do stand up or not. I think she's just more like a actor, but she always is funny, so that's hard to pull off in every role that you're in. Um, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the last race, and then of course when their cars crash, they get out and run to the finish line, and that's when his dad is kind of like proud of him, I guess. Now, obviously, the official NASCAR rules: once you get out of your car, you can't run to the line, right? That would be illegal and obviously not allowed. So Cal Naughton Jr., who was in third, becomes the race winner at the very end. So he finally gets his, I guess, moment of glory. And then, of course, Carly comes back and tries to be like, oh, well, Ricky, now that you're a winner again, I'll go back to you. And I'm like, okay, this one just needs to be put on the sidelines completely because she doesn't care about love. She just wants the money, right? Like she's in it for the money and in it for whoever's in first place. So obviously Ricky decides that he's going to stay with Susan, which is more of the match for him anyway, right? Because she's the one who's been motivating him the entire time. So yeah, it was good that he's resisted the temptation of going back with Carly, and Carly decides that if Ricky doesn't want her, then at least Cal still will. I was like, oh my god, this woman doesn't care. She's just in it for whoever, seems like they're in first place, right? And whoever has the most money is who she's going to be attracted to. Doesn't matter about who they are as a person. It's just all about the money for this woman. So yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so then Cal wins, and then of course they had like the little blooper reel at the end, which was just absolutely hilarious. And then the grandmother reading to the kids about uh, like reading the kids some history stuff. Now, I did have this movie on DVD, which was given to me by a friend, so it was, yeah, obviously there's going to be a little bit more maybe than what you might see on like a streaming service or something. So, but yeah, I just thought this movie was hilarious for its time and still kind of stands the test of time as far as comedy movies go. Yeah, because I guess it would be probably, yeah, 19 or 20 years old, depending on the exact release date um, of the movie. So yeah, kind of hard to believe that that movie is that old. Because I think I went. Did we go? Did I go and see it in theaters? I can't remember. I think I might have though, with a with like my parents or like a group of friends or something. I can't remember. It's again so long ago that I wish they had like had have had like the Cineplex app back then, so you could kind of keep track of what you'd watched. But yeah, unfortunately, that wasn't a thing back then. So uh, you would have had to have kept your ticket stub from even back then to know what you'd gone and seen, which kind of sounds crazy. But yeah, I do believe that I did go see this movie in theaters, and I thought it was even funny when I was a kid. So, um, and then of course, when Ricky's trying to learn to drive again, and he has to feel the fear, and his dad puts the cougar in the car, and then straps the drugs or the so-called drugs to the bottom of the car. I was like, oh my god, there's. It's wild that his dad was trying all these different tactics to get Ricky back into driving fast, and eventually it worked. Because eventually he does get behind the wheel of a NASCAR again, and his dad does ask him, who were you doing that for, and he goes, well, it wasn't for you. So he just says, I got in the car and drove, and his dad was like, yeah, well, good for you then, because that's exactly what I wanted anyway. I didn't want you to be driving for anybody. I just wanted you to be driving. So I guess his dad kind of taught him a valuable lesson, and Ricky learned that he didn't really need to be he didn't really need to be driving for anybody else but himself. Essentially, I guess was kind of the thing, or even that he just kind of needed to drive, and he knew that he could win. So anyway, 8 out of 10 for this movie, and I guess I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye for now.